Good morning. It's good to be with you again today. We're continuing to build on the 4 pillars for a healthy Christian business leader. The pillars are healthy relationships, biblical financial values, biblical spirituality, and balanced living. This week we've been dealing with pillar number 2, which is biblical financial values. So far this week we have looked at tithing, yes or no. Giving is between you and God. Giving sacrificially, not to your hurt and their gain. That was yesterday. And today we're talking about, and the final for this week is being a cheerful giver. So being a cheerful giver. I've heard people say things like, I can't give cheerfully, unless I can give minimal. So if I can give a little bit, then sure, I can be cheerful about that. But if I have to give sacrificially, then, I can't do that cheerfully. And sometimes what people will do is they'll start to give. They make a commitment to give a certain amount. Maybe it's a percentage, because oftentimes percentages get pushed. And so they say, you know what, I'm going to give that 10%. And they start doing that. And they're not making a lot of money, so the 10% is, the amount they're giving is not that much, but it's still the 10%. And then as they continue to give that commitment and their income increases, then of course the amount they're giving increases. And all of a sudden they're looking and saying, wait a minute here, I'm giving a lot of money away. And they struggle with that issue of cheerful giving. Here's the thing, sacrificial giving is different for each individual. And you really do need to figure that out for yourself. We talked about that 2 days ago. That it's, again, not under compulsion. It's voluntary. And it is really between you and God to figure out what it is that you would give. Now, Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 and 8 through 8. And I want to read that for you. This is a passage we did look at a few days ago. But I want to really focus in on the cheerful giving part today. And so Paul writes these words, "Now this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. He who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed." Now again, we have looked at this passage and I've dealt with the issue that it's not a compulsion, it is free will, and it is between you and God. But here are some principles I think that we need to just, in this final session, just really drive home. And the first is that the principle of sowing and reaping, and again, that is absolutely true. The more you plant, the more you receive, and the same is true when it comes to giving. When we give, not that we're going to get necessarily money back, and we talked about that. It's not about we're here and now getting money back, but God does bless us. And there is blessing connected, and God promises that there's blessing connected to our willingness to just freely give. And the second principle is this: no one can tell you what to give. And so, people say, well, you have to give this much, or you have to give this much, and it has to be this percentage. We talked about that on Monday. If you're going to follow the Old Testament rule of tithing, it's 23.33% per year. Not 10%. So if you want to follow that rule, then follow that rule, but then make sure you follow the rule and not a made-up rule of 10%, because that's not the Old Testament tithe at all. And we talked about, that aspect of people say, well, if you're not tithing, then you're stealing from God. Well, if they're only giving 10%, they're still stealing from God, 13.33%. Good morning, Jeremy. Good to have you on this morning. And so keep that in mind. It's not, no one can tell you how much to give. And then the third principle, and I've broken that down into 3 things. It's being cheerful in your giving. Being cheerful. And being cheerful in your giving comes from, I believe, three different things. Number one, having achieved what you said you would do. So you determine in your heart what you're going to give. And then at the end of the year, you say, you know what, I have achieved that. I have reached that goal. And there is joy that comes in that. There is a cheeriness in knowing that, you know, I set a goal on how much I was going to give, and by the grace and the mercy of God, I have given that. Now again, we've talked about sacrificial giving, not just giving the minimal amount that I can. So again, set that goal. And then once you've achieved that, there is joy in that. The second area that causes us to become cheerful givers is seeing what God is doing with what we've given. You know, when we give, you know, to the church, when we give to someone in need, when we give to a particular mission or a missionary, when we give in those ways and we see what God is doing through our giving, that brings joy. And so there is that reality of the cheerful giving, because we see what God is accomplishing by our gift. And then seeing God supply what you need to be able to give. And there's the third aspect of joy, and that's in this passage as well, that God is able to amply supply you with what you need to be able to give. And so again, we've talked about this reality that God doesn't give us more so that we can hoard it. He gives us more so that we can be a blessing to more people and a blessing in more situations. And when we do that, and we see how God supplies our need to be able to give, that causes us to become a cheerful giver. So today, as you go about your day, check your heart when it comes to your giving. Are you cheerful? If not, why not? What's going on that says, you know what, I'm giving, but it's, man, I'm begrudging the giving. What is it? What is it? Is it you haven't determined in your heart yet what to give, and you're just kind of giving spur of the moment thing? Or you have determined to give to the point of your own hurt, and so, you know, it's their gain and your hurt, and the scriptures say it's not for that. What is it that's causing your heart to not be joyful in giving? And then may we grow in our ability to give with joy. May we grow in that, watching God at work through our giving. Have a great weekend, and Lord willing, I'll see you on Monday.